Hello and welcome to the Under Center podcast. I'm your host, Joe Malloy, joined as always by my brother Rain, and we've got two new faces to join us today to talk about the AFI. We're going to talk about SBC and Division 1. We're going to start off with Alex. Alex, welcome to the show. You're going to be joining us all throughout the season, giving us your views on hopefully both, but definitely Division 1. I'd like you to stick around and give your opinions on all of them. So welcome to the show. How's it going?
Thanks very much, Sean. Delighted to be part of the show and looking forward to a long season of gates and controversy and reviews, So, yeah.
I think if nothing else, the AFI is always an entertaining season, whether it's the product on the pitch or off the pitch. Certainly, it's going to be competitive. No more, because I think now there's almost more podcasts covering the AFI than there are teams playing in the AFI. So the competition off the field is going to be equally as strong as on the field this year. And I'm delighted to be joined by Mavericks offensive lineman Connor Scott. Connor, welcome to the show. You're going to be joining us this week for sure. Give us all your takes as we kick off the season. And of course, the Loud Mavericks are going to be playing their first game in week 1 of the AFI season. So first and foremost, welcome to the show.
Hiya, well, thanks for having me.
Pleasure having you on. It's going to be great crack. We're going to try and do this week in and week out, get different guests on from around the league so we can kind of dive in as much analysis and be as broad as we can about all the different takes and all the ongoing stories that are going on around the league. Before we even dive into this season's preview, we've got, as I said, Division 1. That has gone through a lot of changes in the offseason. There's going to be now, I believe it's 10 teams total. It's been amalgamated with Division 2, the teams that were left from Division 2. Also, we're going to have, of course, the classic bowl and promotion scenario up at the top, but also a Division 1 shield, which I think, as I was saying earlier, just breeds competition the whole way through the league. SBC this season, unchanged from last season. They've decided not to go with any promotions or relegations just for this inaugural season of the combined expanded Division 1. So it's going to give us a lot of stuff to talk about. Before we do, I want to just give a quick shout out to AFI chairman, Aidan Maguire. We just got the news around the league. Most teams did that. He's unfortunately had to step away from his role as president. He was only just re-elected as president in the previous year's AGM. So our thoughts are with him. We know he's going through some stuff outside of the game of football. And of course, as much as we all love football, there's plenty going on in our lives outside of that. So we wish him all the best with that. We do hope we see him back very soon. But before we dive in, guys, and I'm going to start with Rino, work our way down the line, just general overall thoughts on the new look, fresh AFI kind of division system, where all the teams have landed, and this new, specifically shield scenario that's going to be debuted in Division 1. Rian, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm still not 100% sure that the league is in a better place without a development league, as in AFI 2. But with the way things fell, I think this was the only way forward with a 2-tier system. And I really like the idea of having that shield in there as well. It's going to, as you say, breed competition throughout the entire league. It's going to be a case where pretty much no team will be eliminated from the playoff scenario until very, very late in the season. So that's always going to keep, the player involvement going. It's going to make things better for us. We'll have more to talk about. So, yeah, I can't wait for the season to come.
Yeah, Alex, especially from a Mavericks point of view, of course, being bowl finalists last season, the shield is probably not on your guys' radar. You're aiming a little bit higher, but an interesting little wrinkle. And I personally think it adds a lot of competition, as I said, the whole way through the division. Keeps things spicy for every team going through. How have the Mavs seen it, and then your overall take for the league in general?
Yeah, of course. It's going to be something that keeps the players motivated and all the teams motivated. So you won't really get to a point where if you've got a team that's in the bottom half of the season and you have scheduled to play them late, their season, would traditionally probably already be over. You're going to get an easier game than you would otherwise get. This will hopefully eliminate that, because really everyone should be fighting to at least get into a shield place and get, better seeding for that. So, yeah, really hoping that sort of brings that extra motivation to teams, and we see a really competitive games throughout the length of the season.
Connor,
but yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, sorry, no. Obviously, for ourselves, yeah, we're looking to get into the playoffs again, and get back to the dance.
Well, as we said, the Mavs are on the slate for week 1, so we'll dive in a little bit more in depth later on in terms of how the Mavs are going. Connor, I want to jump to you just before we wrap up on kind of the general overview. As Rian pointed out, I think I agree with him. AFI does lose just a little something not having the development league, but I think quite an interesting wrinkle to add this shield format in there for the lower half of Division 1, as Alex has already pointed out. Great bit of competition and keeps teams competitive the whole way through, regardless of where they are in the league at the time. What's your overall thoughts on this new structure?
I'm a big fan of it, to be honest. I think it's great in terms of competition. You're facing teams that otherwise you might not have faced before. Like me coming into the league only maybe last year, it gives more opportunity for me to face teams that I might not have faced. If the structure had stayed the same. And in terms of the shield, I also think it's great just because it gives every team an opportunity to have a postseason. Like last season, it was I think it was top 4, top 6 that made it to the playoffs, and if you were below that point, then it was your season's over and that's it. You have to watch from the outside. So I think just having this shield, it's a great opportunity for everyone to have something to play for at the end of the year, at the end of the regular season.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's the goal, right? Is to not just have something to play for, but also as you strive to have more and more competitive games against teams around you, which this kind of expanded format does, especially for the lower half, you hopefully close whatever gap is there between the top and the bottom by giving kind of more closer games, things to work on. And I think as the league progresses, we're seeing it now more in the SBC of sharing game footage. I think as teams start to acquire a little bit more financial backing and a little bit more interest, I think that's starting to become a reality for Division 1 as well. I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 3 or 4 years we start to see much more common game tape at the very least being shared between teams, and that can only benefit because when you can plan, you can play better football. And while we're not a professional league, we all want to be playing number 1 competitive games, but number 2 with lots of fans there. It's great crack to play with fans. We got to play our very first game ever. We got to play down against the Wexford Eagles. They had a huge crowd there. That's probably the biggest crowd I've ever played against. And it's great. It's so much fun to have an atmosphere, whether they're cheering against you or with you. It's really, really cool. But guys, I want to move in now and start to talk about Division 1. And Alex and Connor, I think we'll focus a lot on you, and Rian, jump in if you have any questions. I want to start off with your preparation for the season. Connor, we were talking off air. Angelo Arena, head coach, has had to step away from the team, at least for this season, maybe into the future. Again, unfortunately, same with Aidan Maguire, not football-related stuff going on off the field. So obviously we throw our support behind him and hope everything goes well on that side. But you guys are, as you mentioned, coming off a Division 1 bowl appearance. Expectations have to be really high. We've been chatting and we will chat about how the team has also grown, but give me just how a change in head coach has affected the preseason preparations, and then how you see Deck fitting into the system and what he can bring as head coach for this season.
Well, I think, a lot of the lads there, a credit to a lot of our the players in our team, the preparation that goes on with the boys and even with the assistant coaches as well. Everything's very laid out and very planned. So, a change in the head coach isn't quite as, damaging as it might appear, on paper or anything like that. And that just goes down to the players and being able to stay focused on the season and not kind of get distracted by that kind of stuff. We have a very talented coaching staff with our coordinators and all the assistants that help out on game days. And I think it helps us as players, prepare for the season and keep focused on our performances on the field and not get too distracted by stuff like that. In terms of like Deck taking over as head coach, Deck's been around for a long period of time. He played American football over, with the Mavericks nearly 12 years. And he knows what he's doing as a head coach, and the lads have a lot of trust in him and a lot of faith in him. Obviously, last year he was offensive coordinator for us, and he's been captain as well. So the trust that we have as players towards Deck is, sky high, and we really know that whatever he tells us coming into a game day this season, that we can really throw our trust behind him. We know that like he's prepared well and he knows what's best for us as a team.
Alex, it's always interesting, I think, especially down in Division 1, Division 2 as well previously. A lot of those teams tend to just have a head coach and be very player driven. I know you guys as well. We had a similar scenario with the Pirates back in the days where low numbers, it really galvanizes a lot of players. It throws a lot of young players in at the deep end. And it means then as you start to acquire numbers, you've really got a nicely forged core that has really seen a lot of game action. And I think it bloods in these new guys much faster than in some of the bigger squads. How have you guys felt? I know I was chatting with Connor off air. You never like to see teams like ourselves, the Pirates, disbanding. But what it does do is it frees up a lot of players, or at least a core of players that are looking to play football. I know you guys have had a couple of lads come down from that scenario and also from some of the other teams around the league. How exciting has it been to see the success on the field last season and now see some absolute top quality players join the squad and the expectation then coming into the season?
Yeah, no, it's been brilliant. I mean, post-COVID, we had to make the difficult decision to actually drop down into Division 2 because we had really low numbers. We weren't sure we would even be able to make it through the season if we had stayed in Division 1, where maybe the demands were a little bit higher. So we kind of just made the decision to drop down to Division 2, convinced some of our veterans to kind of come back and built from there. And it really having that core of guys who've been there before and can really take young guys under their wing, it does make it, as you say, it makes it less daunting to be on the field when you know you've got a guy beside you who's been there and done it for years. And also getting that on-field experience. Like, there's nothing that beats that. You can do all the training you want, all the reps in training, but there's nothing compares to actually getting on the field at game day, which is why I think you do see faster development with smaller squads than you do with some of these teams that have a lot of guys, because they're just not getting the reps. You know, and obviously we were very disappointed to see yourselves at the Pirates sort of have to disband for the moment, hopefully only temporarily. We did get a boost of a couple of guys coming up the short trip up the M1 our way. And yeah, I mean, they're really solid players, you know, they're a credit as well to your coaching and your setup there. But yeah, that game, they have game experience. You know, they're not coming into a team having to learn the ropes or anything really. Once you kind of get a hang of the scheme, you can just plug and play there. And that's what hopefully the guys will be doing on Sunday.
Connor, how exciting is it to have such success? I know it must be interesting as a player to come off a final defeat, obviously bitter for anybody, but then to have seen so much success, add more talent, get a preseason. What's the atmosphere like in the team looking forward when the previous season was, okay, it ended in a heartbreak, but objectively a huge success? Where's the team's mentality? Where's it at? Is it heads down? Is there a bit more enjoyment? Is there a bit of excitement, or is it a little bit of pressure that, okay, we've shown what we can do, we have to do this again, we have to prove that we can take that next final step?
I definitely would not say that you know, heads are down or anything. I think we have a lot of confidence in us as a team, and we know that we can replicate the stuff we did last season. I think the one thing the Mavericks are really good at, and you see it through all the team, is, you know, we're really good at dealing with kind of pressure and that kind of stuff. So, you know, it's a thing that we've talked about a lot through preseason, whether it be at training or in group chats or whatever. And that's just kind of nearly like, you know, not to like put down any podcast, but nearly like put them out of your view and ignore what any of the podcasts are saying, whether they're saying you're number one in the power rankings. That none of that stuff means anything if you don't perform on the field. So it's just down to us as players to go out and just perform the best we can and just try and replicate that performance we had last year. You know, last year being my rookie year, it's, you know, great coming in and seeing all this success and everything, and seeing where the bar has to be coming into the second year, and kind of, you know, portraying that to guys that came in this year, or just kind of keeping that level, you know, high for when we come into the season.
And Rian, before we ask the two lads to kind of break down the game coming up in week 1 and probably assure us of a Mavericks victory, let's us chat a little bit more impartially. First game of the season is against the Wexford Eagles, a team we have a lot of experience with fantastically coached team. Of course, we're going to say that about all the AFI teams at the moment because there really is a great depth of coaching, but they're very sophisticated on offense, a lot of speed and a lot of toughness. They were bowl winners. I think for the Mavericks coming into this, as much as you must be high having reached the final last year, there's certainly a lot easier first games to come in and have to deal with, especially with the merger of Division 2. What do you make? How do you see this playing out?
Absolutely. So obviously Coach Klatt has to be given his merits in this one. He has proved on multiple occasions that he is a very good offensive play caller, and he gets the job done, right? We saw it when he was there with the Panthers, and he's done it again with the Eagles in his second stint. They're kind of dark horses in Division 1 this season. I know they are coming up from Division 2, but they pretty much railroaded everybody they were against, right? I don't think they conceded. They maybe conceded one defensive touchdown all season, which is super impressive. So I don't think this is going to be a blowout for the Mavericks, but like we kind of mentioned in our preseason power rankings, we do see the Mavericks as being the number one team, but I think this one is going to be a tough one. They always bring their A game and they never stop at all in a game. They just have relentless energy the entire time. We saw that last season playing against them twice. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, Alex, I guess the exact same question to you. Division 2 champs coming up. There's a couple of teams that have merged in. The Giants, obviously, I'm looking at. So certainly there could have been easier games to start your week 1. How do you feel? How is it shaking out? And how do you see this game going?
Yeah, look, I mean, the Eagles, you'd say, coming up from Division 2, but they're not a Division 2 team. They're traditionally a Division 1 team. I think the last game we played them was in 2019 in Division 1, and I think the Eagles came out on top 46-36. So cracker of a game, if I remember. I think we went again low numbers then there, but it was a great game, and I always love playing the Eagles. They are, as you say, fantastically coached under Kevin Klatt. And I'm looking forward to seeing their new facilities down there as well, because I believe they're playing in a new home venue. And I believe it's a pretty nice setup there. So looking forward to getting down there. As to the actual game, yeah, it's going to be a tough one. They are hard hitters. They're big, stocky, spud-fed men down there in Wexford, and they will deliver some hits and be tough to stop. So undoubtedly looking forward to a hard-hitting game. But I'd be quietly confident, not gonna say that we're expecting to blow them out. Absolutely not. But we're expecting a tough game, but hoping that our experience in playing Division 1 teams last year, whereas the Eagles haven't probably had proper D1 opponents since they folded back in, was it 21 they dropped out of the league? I think so. I think in 21 or 22, the year after COVID, they dropped out. So I'm hoping that our recent experience stands to us and we can overcome them on Sunday.
And Connor, to you, I guess let's build on the confidence you've already expressed. It's not going to be an easy game. We've already gone through that. But on the flip side of that, with a Mavericks win, what a way to make a statement and start the season and really stamp your authority and saying, yeah, we fully intend to make it back to this bowl game and in fact go on and reach promotion to the SBC.
Yeah, I think this Sunday is going to be a real tell-all. I think Wexford are a great team. I'm a huge fan of Coach Klatt and everything he does down there, and it was great seeing how well they did last year in Division 2. Seeing the scores they were putting up was just incredible.
Hold on. Connor, it wasn't that great. Some of those scores were against us, so I calmed down a little bit.
It was great. Well, it was great for us from the outside watching in. Maybe not as great on the field. We used to have to go through it, but it's great seeing a team play that well, and it only builds the excitement going into this Sunday to see how they perform. And I think us as the Mavericks, we kind of proved last season that you really just cannot say that any team coming up from Division 2 is a write-off. Like they have any team that comes up, they're a very talented team, and they have great, like you said, they have great coaches down there. And I don't think this Sunday will be an easy game at all. Obviously, we're hoping we come out with a win, and I think that will, if so, we're setting hopefully setting the pace for the season. But you just have to take it game by game, and just kind of, hope this Sunday goes the way we want it to go.
Yeah, look, I think that's the most exciting thing about week 1, right? Everyone's starting from scratch. Again, this isn't the pro league, right? Nobody even fully knows where everybody's lined up right at the start of the season. For a guy like me, I'm much more of an eye test guy. Most times I don't know the stats. Even more times I don't even know the records of the teams we're talking about. So for me, I love it. Everyone's at 0-0. We really get a full test. So many surprises can happen. And I always feel like week 1 is about maneuvering yourself as best as possible. What a place to make a marquee win, really build. At the same time, a loss isn't destroying. You can get a lot of the surprises and things can move on from there. Before we wrap up on the Mavs game, and I want to talk a little bit before we move on to the second game, which is, I believe, Jets Razorbacks. Just really quickly, I want to get a prediction each way. I'm going to go from my left to right. So we're going to start the Reen. Go, Alex, and then finally, Connor. Reen, give us your predictions for this game, Mavericks against the Eagles.
I am going to say Mavericks to win 35-21.
Alex?
Yeah, I think I'll go Mavericks to win by a touchdown. I don't know why it's score-wise, but Miles by a touchdown.
And Connor?
I'll go Mavericks win. I'll say I think it'll be a close game. I say it'll come down to a field goal. So, and hopefully the field goal is with 11 men. But however we can take it, we'll take the win.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Connor. Go, Reen.
Sorry, you go ahead. I was just about to say we have 2 Mavericks on, and they both went with really conservative answers. It should have been like, Mavs by 50. But,
yeah.
We don't want to come out with too much confidence, and then we'll be.
It's only week 1, Reen. After they get a steamroll, then it's going to be Mavericks by 50 all the way around.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't see a Coach Klatt team losing by 50 at any point this season.
Absolutely not. They're far too good for that. I'm going to go with Connor. I'm going to go exciting. As he said, buzzer-beating 11-man field goal to win the game. I'm going to go for a Mavericks win. Guys, really quickly, before we move on to the second game, Connor, we want to chat to you a little bit as our esteemed guest this week. We've got only a couple of audience questions have come in, but outside of that, just really quickly, you're saying last year, obviously your rookie season, number 1, how did you find the sport? How did you find the Mavericks? And then how you got on your rookie season, and I guess your personal season goals coming through this season.
Well, I think I've been in and around the Mavericks for, I'd say, nearly 6 or 7 years now. I joined with the flag team in like 2017, I think it was. I was always a fan of American football, always since the early 2010s. I've been a Carolina Panthers fan, and I heard and one of my friends actually played for the flag team, told me I should come down, and as soon as I went down, I was hooked. So I went from flag team to youth team. I trained with the senior team then before COVID, but then that would have been my rookie season, but then COVID hit and season was cancelled, and then I just kind of fell into the same thing I think a lot of players did. I just didn't have the energy to actually come back and get back training again. And then I think after seeing the Mavericks in Division 2, light up the league, I was like, I've got to come back to this. So I came back last year, and obviously it was a successful rookie year in terms of making the final, and it was a great year for me because we have one thing I'm so grateful of is we have so many veteran linemen on there. John McCarl and David Lynchy and all those lads are able to really take me under the wing and teach me all the ways. And I was kind of blessed in the way that I managed to get a lot of play time last year, pretty much all over the O-line, center, guard, tackle, whatever you name it. I probably played it last year, and it was a great chance to kind of build up some minutes under my belt heading into this year. I think this year my main focus is to kind of break into that kind of starting team properly, kind of solidify myself as someone that can perform week in and week out. Last year it's kind of maybe starting every couple of games or so, but different positions each week, just kind of filling in wherever the depth needed. So my main goals for this year just kind of outperform myself last year and just kind of set a higher bar each year.
Yeah, I think that's a great objective for a young player, especially with a lot of veterans around you. Always going to be tough to win that starting role, but at the same time, so much experience, so much knowledge, it can really help you ramp up that kind of learning curve one of the questions we got in from our viewers: pass protection or run blocking? Which is your favorite?
Oh wow, that's a difficult one. I mean, personally, I do quite like pass protect. I'm a very I like my fundamentals, my technique in terms of my steps and my hands and stuff, and I think that you can really show that off in pass protection with kind of the finesse of it, but it's hard to break them apart.
Helps that the QB is protecting as his best friend, so
Yeah, best friend for years. So I get that pat on the back every time I get some good pass protection. So I think I would say pass protection, but nothing beats a good run play where you just it's just nearly 1v1. You're just hitting the guy in front of you and just seeing who's strongest.
Yeah, I was gonna say pass pro is for the thinkers. I think the old run blocking, it's just for the meatheads, right? Just go and hit somebody. Hey, look, I don't play O-line. I think I'm gonna get a lot of stick for this, but yeah. Anyway, that's an interesting take. And then we got one more question in for you as well, Connor, before we wrap it up. Favorite play from last year?
Favorite play? Oh wow. That's a difficult one. I mean, there was so many, and I actually would say one of my favorite plays, I was probably one I wasn't even involved in, was in the playoffs. Alex probably remember this one. In the playoffs, when our defense was on the field and Crusaders were on the field looking to make a winning drive, and it was at home, and you had all the people on the sideline were cheering Mavericks, and it was just a great atmosphere. And then Brendan Sims coming down and getting the pass deflection to really send our offense back on the field so we could kneel out the game. And it was such a close game, and the tensions were so high the whole way through. So having it come down to that moment and having a crowd behind you that's building up the atmosphere, it was just an amazing moment. Just hearing the cheers when Brendan Sims got that pass deflection down.
Unbelievable. It's always great to have those kind of goosebump moments, especially in your first season. They never quite come back. As the experience comes, it's a little bit more predictable. I always loved my first season. So much stuff kind of comes at you so fast. When something goes well and things go well for the team as well, it's super exciting. The adrenaline going. I think it really helps lock players in for life once they get that moment. Connor, thanks a million for walking us through that. I hope you will stay on with us. Can you stay on for a few more minutes with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, we'll keep rolling straight on. The second game, guys, from the Division 1 slate of games this week 1 of the AFI season sees the Northern Ireland Razorbacks against the Antrim Jets in Newforge. We're going to go through this, obviously, without the guests here. We're going to kind of break this down a little bit more straightforward. We won't spend too long. Rian, the Jets coming off 0-8 season, very difficult for any team, as always. There was even rumors that they might not come back this year, but they've really rallied around, sprung back into action. They're going to be back with a vengeance, I imagine, trying to prove that they have fully recovered and they're willing to kind of go the distance against the Razorbacks, who for the last couple of seasons, I think more than any other team I just hear of, players coming in, players going out, they're always moving. They have a great recruitment going and a fantastic social media presence. Just break it down how you see, just preseason, how these two teams are lining up in your eyes.
Yeah, the Jets are a bit of an enigma this year. Like, we know that they're coming in with a new coaching staff. They seem to have gotten an influx of players just based on what I'm seeing from their social media. We don't really know how that's going to work out. They might be a contender. Now, we know ourselves from playing with the Pirates and going through a couple of rebuilding years that it's not always the easiest. You can have the talent in the room, but just that first season, 2 seasons with a new regime is always going to be a tough start. The Razorbacks, they must be nearing 100 on their roster now at this stage with all of the news. Just player after player after player coming in. They were decent enough last season in the regular season. I think they just missed out on the playoffs, 3-5 record. But I mean, they're definitely going to want to build on that. They're definitely going to be hungry, and they have all of those players that they had there last year who are just looking to build and build going into this season. So I see the Razorbacks coming out on top in this game.
Yeah, Alex, how's it going? How do you see this going? Is it both teams obviously looking to build? I see here, Darius sent me on some notes. The Kuzmic brothers, very influential in that Razorback system. They're now out of there, but Stu, who I believe was going to be going to Germany, he's going to stay. So that's a huge benefit. Obviously, the Jets, we know their numbers fluctuating. How do you see this breaking down? Both teams that want to definitely progress. Obviously, the Razorbacks move forward, and the Jets really just solidify themselves and make sure that they're around for a long time to come.
Yeah, well, look, I think the Jets, it's fair to say last season was probably rock bottom for the Jets. They didn't have a good season. But the good thing about that is the only way is up. You know, they've got a new head coach in, Jerry McCabe, who used to be the defensive coordinator of the Jets a while back. So you would hope to see some improvement on defense there. But they only scored 12 points last season on offense. So they're really going to have to do something to improve on that end of the ball if they want to, you know, pick up any wins this year. I think good news for them is they got rid of two problematic podcasters, you know, from that O-line. So they might actually, you know, the quarterback might have a chance of staying upright this year. Shout out to Chris and Dave. All love from me. Yeah, so, you know, it'll be interesting to see how they go. You would like to think that they're going to improve this year. And they do have, you know, some numbers. They had a preseason scrimmage with the Rebels. So, you know, iron sharpens iron. You got to hope that they're going to improve on there. Razorbacks, I mean, they've been steadily improving under head coach Garrett Miller for the last, you know, 3 seasons. They're going to be aiming to get right in that mix again this year and be battling for playoff spots. And yeah, as I said, they've lost the Kuzmariks, good players there, but they certainly have the depth to cover that. And you can only assume with the coaching job that's been going on there that everyone will be getting better. So yeah, I think the Razorbacks have a good chance this year.
And Connor, finally to you. Obviously, Razorbacks have a good chance, as Alex said. Does that for you mean the promotion playoffs? Or do you think keeping their eye and trying to really solidify themselves and win a shield, win a bit of silverware, is that more of a reasonable goal? And I guess the same question for the Jets. Is it more about showing the numbers, gaining the confidence, blooding those new players? Or do you think the shield is a reasonable target for the Jets coming into the season?
I think in terms of the Razorbacks, for me personally, I think they're a very underrated team heading into this season. I think, you know, last season wasn't exactly what they'd hoped it to be in terms of kind of hoping to come in and be challenging for the final, but I think they really developed themselves quite nicely through the season. Like we played them twice last year, first game of the season, and I think it was last game of the season, and it was like playing two completely different teams. You know, I think through last year they really developed themselves quite well, and I think having a preseason now to kind of build on that, and like you said, the depth that they have is just, you know, next level. So I think they have a really great opportunity this year to try and fight for playoffs. The Jets, like Alex said, you know, the only way from here is up. And I think, you know, having spoke to a few of them during the preseason, you know, they've spoke about how they've got more players in and it's been kind of a different dynamic throughout the preseason. And they're kind of a hard team to predict, really. Like, I don't want to put them down and say that they're fighting for a shield. Off results last year, you'd nearly want to say that, but the hope is that they can come out and they can, you know, start fighting for games and start trying to get wins. In terms of a prediction, I'd say just the shield, try and set the bar low going into it, and then from there you can only kind of flourish, you know, if you can hit the playoffs or not.
Right. Well, that takes us to the end of our analysis. Rian, let's go predictions again. I want to hear yours first. We'll go down the line.
I'm going to say, because it's the first game of the season, it's going to be fairly low scoring. And I'm going to say it's going to be 21-0 to the Razorbacks.
Alex?
Yeah, I think this was the opener last year as well in the division, and the Razorbacks came out 22-6. I think it's probably going to be similar. Want to see the Jets get on the board and at least start off on a positive note. But yeah, I'm going to think it's similar score, 24-7. I'll go.
And Connor?
To the Razorbacks.
I think I'm going to go maybe a bit closer. I'm going to say Razorbacks 28-14.
Yeah, look, I'm going to come down the same way as you guys. I think, as we said, preseason, it's very hard to gauge. You got to go really off what you've seen last season. again, I think the Jets and the Razorbacks this season are going to have slightly different objectives. I'm going to go with a Razorbacks win just off the back of the previous season. But Alex, a little bit like you, I reckon the Jets are going to get on the board. I think it's going to be a huge stepping stone for them. A tight loss is as good as anything to start off the season. And there's definitely more competitive games to come down the road for their schedule. So, yeah, we're going to round it up then. We're going to go all Razorbacks across the board on that one. So we're going to move on now to the SBC, a huge clash to start and talk about a way to set the tone. Rian, the very first game on the slate of the Week 1 AFI Shamrock Bowl Conference is last year's Shamrock Bowl final. It's UCD against the Rebels. Again, from what I've seen online, there's a lot of kind of player movement going on that could affect these, and a lot of this stuff we won't know how it shakes out until we see the teams line up. Of course, Sean McVay, prolific running back, he's moved on, and then the Rebels as well. They have a huge squad constantly turning. I see a couple of DNs have moved off, and that was an absolutely dominant defensive line in the last year. How do you see these two teams have done across the preseason, and then how do you see it shake out into Week 1?
Yeah, first of all, thanks very much to the AFI script writers for giving us the game we all wanted to see in the very first week of the season. Fair play to them. But yeah, like you mentioned, for me, the main talking point in this game is going to be how UCD function without Sean McVay. Now, I'm sure there are other players there who can fill in that gap. They certainly have a very deep squad there. But Sean McVay was a very big part of their offense in last. How they're going to kind of game plan to make up for that loss. On the flip side, with the Rebels, I'm interested to see if the hunger is still there. You know, going back to back is tougher than it seems. And I'm not doubting the hunger of the Rebels, but sometimes the motivation is just not the same the year after you make it to the big game. So I reckon they're going to be right there, but are they going to have enough to beat out UCD? And I think those are the two teams that I'm looking at going to that Shamrock Bowl this year once again.
Alex, a very tasty matchup. I think made even more interesting by new Rebels head coach Shane Campbell. A tough test for him. And same with the Mavs. As tough a test as you can have in your first game of the season. I'm sure he's going to be relishing the challenge. They certainly have the squad, always with Ty Henry. So many names you can name on that Rebels team. How do you see it going against the UCD defense? And then on the flip side as well, the running game changing up has always been a weapon for UCD, coming up against a historically very strong Rebels defense. How does it shake out?
Yeah, I mean, the Rebels are incredible. You know, all the praise in the world can go to them. They truly have had a great run. But I don't discount, I just certainly don't discount UCD either. I mean, I think the UCD guys will have been training all preseason just specifically with one goal in mind, and that's beat the Rebels. Before the schedule came out, anything else didn't matter. It's going to be to beat the Rebels. So, I mean, the students, you know, I'm sure they're studious, and they're looking at the game plans, trying to, you know, looking at all the footage of Rebels games last year, trying to pick holes in that. So, you know, I think Shane's definitely got his work cut out there, the new coach. But at the same time, the element of surprise might work to his advantage if he's, you know, had the chance to install anything new. You know, UCD might see it coming. Whereas if it's the same old Rebels team, it's a lot to say. The same old Rebels. I mean, they just beat everyone. But if it was the same Rebels, they might have a game plan specific to counter it. Maybe Shane adds something new into the mix there that helps see them over the line.
Yeah, and how big of a deal is it? Obviously, first game of the season, literally all season left to go. Two of the favorites for the Shamrock Bowl, a loss to either side is not necessarily detrimental. But do you see it as being more of putting down a marker, or is it really just kind of the initial jabs testing each other as they inevitably run into each other further down the line this season?
I think the way you take that game depends on the result. You know, if whatever team loses, will be saying like, oh, okay, look, you know, we have 7 other games, we got to just focus on them, win them, and we'll learn we'll take what we learned from this game. and use it when we inevitably face them in the postseason. And the team that won will think, we have the mental edge now. We've beaten them. We've shown we can beat them, and we'll take that with us on throughout the season. So I think that depends who wins. How you take it.
Connor, how do you like this battle of the giants squaring up into week one? And again, I guess the same question I asked to Alex. How do you see it on either side as this, whatever way this result breaks? How important is it? And I guess, where do you break out your top plays? I guess you don't kind of bring out the Statue of Liberty and stuff here in game one. You keep that in your back pocket for when the games really count later down the stretch.
And yeah, that was something I was just about to mention as well. Games like these, when it's a battle between the two favorites so early in the season, it's nearly like a game of chess. Like, you don't want to show them everything you have, because you want to bring out some things later towards in the playoffs and in the Shamrock Bowl again if they meet there as well. But I think there's no way in the Premier Division than a matchup between those two. And I think all praise to the Rebels. They're such a strong team, and the last 2 years or so they've just been demolishing everybody, coming through every team. And I think for UCD, this game is really like they've got a chip on their shoulder now. Like last year, losing in the Shamrock Bowl in that fashion as well, and such a good game as well. I think it was just coming through preseason, like Alex says, the whole focus is just beating the Rebels, and I think that's something we're gonna have to just wait and see this Sunday, and just see if they can try and replicate the kind of performances they had last year. But for me, I think it's really difficult to dethrone this Rebels team. I think they're just so strong, and all over the field on offense and defense. And Ty Henry as a quarterback as well is just so talented that he just recognizes and finds a way to poke holes in any defense he comes up against.
Right, Ryan, break it down. What way do you see this game shaking out?
I see this being a very back and forth game, a lot of scoring. I'm going to say 38-34 to the Rebels.
Alex?
I'm going to say that UCD have done enough homework, and they're gonna spring a surprise here. A 42-35 win for the Sentinels of UCD.
And Connor?
I'm going to go Rebels. I think it's going to be a high-scoring one, so I'm going to say Rebels 49 to the UCD 42. I think it's going to be very close, but I think it's just going to be a shootout.
Yeah, again, I'm going to go for the Rebels. It's hard to go against them based on last season's performance. I also think UCD have a little bit bigger of an adjustment to make based on Sean McVay's leaving. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying maybe it takes more than week one of the season before they're up and running on the running game side. So I'm going to go and take the Rebels for this one. Our final game we need to look at moving on is we've gone from the Dublin Derby down to the Munster Derby. UL take on Cork at Maguire's Field. This is another very interesting one. I misspoke earlier, of course. UL coming up from Division 1. They take on the SBC for the first time as champs. And then, of course, Cork, who went all the way to the semi-finals, only falling to UCD last season. So two top-notch teams. Again, Rain, I'm going to say it. We've said it twice already. But I think in the same way with the Mavs, certainly easier ways to start your season than with a very strong promotion side in UL.
Absolutely, yeah. Like UL looked dominant in D1 last season, and they're coming into this new season very well coached, very well run, very organized. But they're also not going to have that much game takedown for the Shamrock Bowl guys to look at. So this game particularly is going to be the most unknown for any SBC team moving forward. So it is going to be a tough one for the Admirals as well. I've heard stories that the Admirals have lost their QB1 this season, which is always a devastating blow to any team. Now, there was the kind of rumblings earlier on when we brought out our power rankings. We didn't have Cork on that list. Let me just say I did not agree with that that opinion. I think Cork are going to be okay in this game, but yeah, it's one of those ones where you just don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, I think let's be very clear. Let's put all of the responsibility for those
That
predictions
was Dara.
on Dara. We've already had the Dublin Derby, the Munster Derby, and I think Dara versus the Cork Admirals all season long is going to be another derby. Alex, how do you see it? As Rian said, rumors at least that Stephen Hayes won't be returning as quarterback for the Admirals. We don't know. Hopefully, if there is any Admirals listening, absolutely come on and set the record straight. We're not trying to rumble anything. We're just trying to take on the news that we can and add a bit of spice to these proceedings. But how do you see that go? Difficult for any team to have to adjust to losing, as Reen says, QB1, and finding a way to run an offense either in a different style or with a different player.
Yeah, I mean, it could always be, spies and within the Cork camp, putting out little droplets for people to pick up, and all of a sudden Stephen Hayes is starting there on Sunday, and it's like, what the fuck?
He's already 60 yards down the field before everyone realizes he's on the pitch.
Exactly. You never, again, that's the thing about the AFI. We're not professionally, we don't know who's going to be under centre for Cork, but they're a great side, well drilled side, great coaching staff there, and a good solid base of players. So UL will definitely have their work cut out for them. I think not having any, UL are a young team. They won't have a great deal of SBC experience in the team, although in the coaching staff certainly do and will to be doing everything in their power to have UL ready. Maybe I think the first game of the season it might be tough to spring them for a win there against a very experienced and good Cork side. But they're a great team, UL. We faced them and lost to them twice last year. Excellent team, and they'll be well coached. So they certainly, I wouldn't rule them out. They could definitely spring a surprise there. But I think Cork's sort of experience will stand to them. Again, that you can do all the repping you want in training, preparing for Cork, but until you get on that field and play SBC football, you don't quite know.
And speaking of SBC football, Connor, in case UL didn't know, unlike me, that they were in the SBC, they've been slated by the AFA to play 3 games in March alone, starting obviously against Cork, then against the Trojans, then against the Rebels. So by no means an easy start for them into SBC life, but I'm sure they're going to be relishing it. How do you see that challenge? Again, a lot of games in a short period. It's really going to test the depth of that squad, I feel.
Yeah, I think it's a real trial by fire for them coming into the Premier Division this year. Like Alex said, we played them last year, and they're such a strong team, and they're so hard to keep the offense contained, and their defense is just so hard hitting, and they know exactly what they know who they're coming up against, and they're a well drilled team as well. The coaches down there, they're very talented, and they're great at finding the holes in an offense. It's a very difficult opening month to have coming up against those 3 teams as well. Those three teams, some of the stronger teams up there in that division. But I mean, coming into this weekend, it's all about just trying to find the ground and just kind of get your grasp of what you can get achieved up there in the Premier. So I do have a lot of confidence in UL as well. I think they're a very talented team, and I think they can get stuff going. So I would back them this year, to get a good season going.
Right. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the show. We've got one last prediction round to make. Rian, how do you see this Vikings against Admirals game going?
Yeah, I think this one is going to be, like I said, it's the Admirals to lose. So I'm going to take them on it. I'm going to take them 31-20. 31-20 to the Admirals.
Yeah, I'm going to go a slightly closer one there. I'm going to go 27-21 to the Admirals.
And Connor?
I'm going to go with UL. I think UL are going to get it outdone in 35-21.
Connor just hit me. I was about to say, I'm getting bored. We've all kind of gone down the slate of pick the favorites as we get into the season, as we see things shake out. I think of all the teams we've seen, obviously we've spoke about the Razorback and the Jets. That could be a tight one. But I think this is the most likely to cause an upset. So I'm going to go with UL. It's a tough slate. I don't know if they're going to get 3 from 3 out of that slate to start SBC life, but why not? It's a close game, literally geographically for them in terms of the SBC. So I think first game of the season, you hopefully have as many healthy bodies as you're ever going to have for the rest of the season. Plenty of time to prepare. A lot of, I'd say, excitement and encouragement having come up through the ball victory last year. So I'm going to take UL as well. I don't know by much. I imagine if it is a UL victory, it's going to be a tight one. So that's where I'm going to go today. Guys, Alex, of course, you're going to be joining us for the rest of the season. Connor, hopefully we'll have you on again. Unfortunately, Dara wasn't here this year. He is, of course, playing for the Rhinos this season, so he's probably going to see you on the pitch at some stage this season. He's looking forward to it. Make sure you give him a shout out. But Connor, thanks a million for joining us this evening.
Thanks very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Alex and Rian, a pleasure as always, and we'll see you again next week.
Much appreciated.
And from all of us here at the Under Center podcast, you can follow us live on these shows on Facebook, on YouTube, and on X as well. All our social medias during the week, and clips of these shows are available at Under Center Pod on X and at Under Center Pod on Instagram as well. These are, of course, available in audio format on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. And please do engage with us wherever you can, whether that's over the social medias, on the videos, any comments we can get, especially about the AFI. We're all about generating a conversation, having a bit of good crack between all the teams and all the listeners around Ireland. We know it's gaining a lot of fans, so we're looking forward to hearing from all you guys. We know you have your choice of podcasts at the moment for AFI news and reports, so we appreciate you guys tuning in to us. From all of us here at Under Center Podcast, thank you very much, and we'll see you again next week.